Test, test.
Megtooth Sabers requires a lot of work on engineering, drilling, smoothing, tapping, setting, imagining, cutting, stripping, twisting, dipping, tin it, pin it, wire it, fire it, lock it, blast it, swing it, bash it. Megtooth Sabers.
We're live. So hello everybody. Welcome to Megtooth Monday Live, the first one of February 1st, 2021. Hopefully it'll be a good night. I have some stuff in the can, which I'm going to show tonight on an install that I'm doing that's right back here behind you. But I'm shooting a full install vid on the Saber. Hey, Darth Guide. I haven't had a chance to look at those chassis yet. My J job has not been fun at all this week. But I did want to show you all an update from last week. If you remember last week, we were working on the charging pod for the Mentor Graflex. And I promise that last time I'll show the Mentor Graflex until it goes to its full premiere video, which all my Megtooth Monday Live people are like, yeah. I've seen that Graflex. Hey, Fernando. I'm sorry I haven't got back to you yet either, Fernando. But this is the Mentor Graflex again. I'm going to turn it off. And if y'all remember, you know, the battery pod comes out of this. I got to be careful when I'm taking this battery pod out. Stand by. I don't want to bust anything. Okay, so the battery pod comes out of this Mentor Graflex, and here is the battery pod. So there's the Mentor without the battery pod. I'm going to close the lid back on the battery pod. And then last week we built this. Now, of course, this doesn't look like it looked last week, but this is the charging module, which was kind of a disaster on the channel. Hey, Mike Hendershot, that's awesome. Darth Guide. And but at any rate, I did build this out. And you remember last week I was all depressed. So look at there. I don't know if you guys can see this, but the green light's on there on the charging module. And I was trying to use up this battery, so it should be dead. And check this out. When I slide the battery in, see the red light? Pull the battery out. Green light's on. Put the battery in. Red light. So it's charging, and it actually works. I've already charged the battery a couple cycles. So last week what we thought was an epic failure with this charging module didn't turn out to be an epic failure. So I wanted to show everybody that actually got it all to work out with normal LEDs. I did not use, Brian Connor's on. Brian Connor is here. I also wanted to show everybody, I got, since Birchie's Etsy store went out of, commission, I finally got, me some armor blanks. Check that out. This is from Sabers. I haven't done the aluminum black weathering on it, but that's pretty sweet right there. Got that from Sabers. It's pretty awesome, but not as awesome as Birchie's that Birchie was selling on his Etsy store. But, Birchie kind of got a little bit out of the custom saber community because of drama. And, unfortunately, this week I got involved in a little bit of drama. Some of that might have been because work was really bad this week. And anyway, somebody posted something on the internet, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't think that's the best way to do that. But that's kind of what is causing me to do this video on the can. So without further ado, and I'm not going to say where the drama was or how it all went, but I don't know. To me, this was a problem. I guess one of the biggest issues on Facebook, and I've told this to Birch. I mean, you got guys like Brian Connor, Fernando DeRosa, Dimitri Stock, Frederick Cubanate that are on there posting on all these Facebook groups. And those are the people you need to get advice from. The issue I had is there were two posters and somebody had asked a question, and these two guys that had just asked a basic question about Profi, they chimed in like they already knew what they were doing. And I'm like, well, you don't know what you're doing. You were just asking a question the other day about the clash sensitivity. So if you didn't even know you can adjust the clash sensitivity, what are you talking about on this? But at any rate, without further ado, let's roll what's in the tank for the footage. And the cool thing is I'll be able to chat with you guys while this is going on, because this is
Hey, greetings everybody. This came up the other day on the Profi Board support group, and unfortunately I got drawn into commenting in a way that I normally don't, but I get frustrated when people give bad advice, especially newcomers, and they're given advice on subjects that they're really not 100% sure what they're talking about. And that's kind of frustrating to me, especially when they steer somebody in what I think is the wrong direction. And the subject matter is illuminated AV switches and the appropriate resistor for an illuminated AV switch. So one of the users on Profi Board support group asked about which resistor he needs to use to protect his LED within his illuminated switch. And somebody replied, use a dyno ohm resistor. Well, I'm going to show you what a dyno ohm resistor is. And here it is. This is a 20 milliamp dyno ohm resistor. And basically what this dyno ohm does, it's a variable resistor. And no matter which voltage is input into it, it feeds to constant 20 milliamps. So it's a cheap way to use a resistor that delivers a fixed current no matter what voltage you're providing. It's providing 20 milliamps. There's a couple reasons why I don't think this is the best idea. Number one, a dyno ohm variable resistor is large and clunky. It actually has some weight and some girth to it. And when you solder it onto a wire inside of your hilt, it's really prone to wiggling around. When we're wielding our lightsabers and we're waving them around and slashing other lightsabers, picture this thing like a head injury. So your brain inside your cranium, when you hit an object that your brain keeps traveling. That's what causes the injury. So inside your hilt, this dyno-ohm resistor is, when you clash with somebody or you're swinging your hilt, this dyno-ohm resistor is, following that motion with inertia and momentum. Another reason why dyno-ohms are a bad idea is in most applications, particularly in tight installs, there's not a room for a dyno-ohm. And in my opinion, the dyno-ohm is a band-aid on what the real solution is. So tonight we're going to be wiring a illuminated AV switch, and I'm going to go show you which one. So I'm going to go to switches, and then we're going to go to momentary switches and 12 millimeter AV style. And the switch that I'm wiring tonight is actually this one. It's a 12 millimeter red ring switch, so it's got a red LED in it. And if we come down here, you'll notice that it says, in order not to fry the LED, use the correct resistor. Now the LED has a forward voltage of 2 volts and runs at 20 milliamps. So remember that, 2 volts, 20 milliamps. That's the only thing we need to know. So this is the forward voltage, and this is the amperage that's required at that forward voltage. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go down here in the lower left-hand corner of the custom Saber shop. They have this handy-dandy LED calculator. And we're going to put in our supply voltage, and I'm just going to say it's 4. I'm just going to use 4, even though it's 3.7 because I'm rounding up. The forward voltage was 2 on this LED, and we want it to run at 20 milliamps. And I'm going to click to calculate. Bam! 100 ohms, 0.4 watts, and the closest resistor that TCSS sells is 150 ohm, 25 watt resistor. Now, if you'll remember that that variable ohm resistor, the dyno-ohm, here it is, it's $2.63. But if we come down here, and I'm going to go find the appropriate resistor that we need for this build and show you how little it costs. Actually, let me just look at resistors. All right, so let's scroll down on resistors, and we're looking for the 150 ohm quarter watt resistor right here. It is 55 cents versus the dyno-ohm, which was almost $4. Here you go. Here's the dyno-ohm. It's $2.63. Now, I even think that the custom Saber shops is overpriced at 55 cents for this resistor. You can go on Amazon, you can go on DigiKey, you can go on lots of websites and order bulk resistors in packs for pennies on the dollar. So you can get 200 of these 100 ohm resistors, and you can get closer to what the actual resistor is supposed to be. And resistors are a little bit like nuclear warfare, and if you get close enough, it's good enough. So, the actual calculator called for 100 ohm, but you can use 150 ohm. I think you could probably get away with an 82 ohm as well. But the fact of the matter is I have 100 ohm resistors in these packs. So basically what I'm going to do now is we're going to go and look at this red LED, and I'm going to show you how they work. And I do have another video on these things.
All right, greetings everybody. So here we are. I have an illuminated AV switch. This is the red LED illuminated AV switch, which we're going to be putting in the Saber. You know it's red because they put a little bit of color marker here, and here I have a blue one, and you can tell it's blue because there is no color marker. It's just a blue plastic. Now on these AV switches there's 4 poles. This pole is marked with a plus sign, and this pole is marked with a minus sign. This is the positive and negative for the LED. Now, you almost consider these switches as 2 things. Number one, they're an LED, but they're also a switch. And most momentary switches, they just have 2 poles. Where these illuminated momentary switches, they have 4 poles. The positive and the negative marked poles are the power for your LED.
So on this application, I'm going to be wiring the positive direct to battery, and then I'm going to be wiring the negative to a resistor. And in this case, we're going to use a 100 ohm resistor. But before we get to that, here's a pack of resistors that I got for $3, and it's an assortment. And we're going to open up this assortment, and you can see, you know, I've got resistors of a gazillion different types and sizes. I paid $3 for this, so it's, you know, they're cheap. And in this pack, look what I got. You know, the custom Saber shop only had 150 ohm resistors. Well, look at this. Here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 100 ohm resistors. And actually there's 20 because I already got one out. So here is a 100 ohm resistor. Now, just to triple check the resistor, I'm going to put my handy dandy multimeter in here, and we're going to put the resistor up here, and I'm going to measure its resistance just to make sure that it's 100 ohms. So I'm going to call on this resistor here. Ooh, look out. And there you can see that I'm getting 98.3 ohms of resistance across this resistor. So this is indeed a 100 ohm resistor. And remember, like I said before, you know, resistors are almost a little bit like nuclear warfare, and you get close enough. Now 98 ohms is 100 ohms. But now what we're going to do is we're going to bring in my test battery, and I'm going to hook the positive leg of my test battery to the positive of this LED, and then I'm going to take my negative leg, which I'm going to wire my resistor on my negative leg, and it doesn't matter whether you put it on negative or positive, it just doesn't matter. As long as you're resisting the stream, you're good. And I'm going to hook my negative leg with the resistor onto this, and you'll see it light up. Now that's through a 100 ohm resistor. That's the appropriate resistor for this LED. That if you use this resistor, you'll protect this LED and it'll last for a long time. Now, the other key thing is this resistor is very small. When you solder it into a wire, it becomes almost an integral part of the wire, and it doesn't have a whole lot of weight, so it's not going to be clunking around inside your hilt. And you can shrink it to the other wires, and it's like it's not even there. So these resistors are really simple to wire in and cost effective. Again, you know, this was just one of the packs of resistors in my assortment that I ordered, you know, that I got for $3. So this resistor may have cost me in that whole assortment of pack maybe 2 or 3 cents. So you want to pay 2 or 3 cents for a resistor, or do you want to pay, you know, $3 for a dyno ohm and then have that big thing clunking around inside your hilt? Now, since we've talked about the positive and negative poles on these illuminated switches, the other 2 poles, one is your switch wire and one is your ground, so that when you push the button on here, you're basically completing a circuit, and the computer board senses you completing that circuit and then does whatever it's supposed to do, whether it's a short click or a long click or a press and hold or a double click or a triple click. And the computer board, the Profi in the case of this Saber, translates what you want the board to do based on the button commands that you input. So on the Profi, everybody's like, well, which switch goes to ground and which switch goes to the switch pole? Well, it doesn't matter. So usually it doesn't matter which of these poles you run your switch pole wire to and which you run your ground to, because they're both, you know, when you touch this button, you're just completing the circuit. That's what the Profi is sensing. So you can, I'm going to run, you know, a green wire on one and a white wire on the other. The white wire will be my ground, my switch ground. Now on my LED, I'm going to run a red wire for the positive and a black wire for the negative. And the black wire I'm actually going to hook onto one of the FETs, and I'm going to give this button off behavior and on behavior. When it's off, it's going to be blinking,
and then when the Saber's on, it's going to be solid on, and when the Saber's in lockup, it'll even, it'll alternate between black and red, so it'll look like it's unstable during lockup, the actual illumination on the button. So that's just some of the fun games we can play with Profi, and we're going to go ahead and wire this button up. Okay, so I've got my helping hands hooked onto the positive terminal so I don't accidentally mistake that positive terminal, and basically I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to wire my switch wires. So my switch wires are going to be green and white. My white's going to go to my switch ground, and my green is going to go to my switch terminal on the Profi. So I'm going to pre-tin the leg that I'm going to there, and then I'm going to strip some wire. I'm using 30 gauge PTFE here for the switches, so you can see I'm on 30 there, and I'm going to strip some of that 30 gauge PTFE wire, and then we're going to flux this thing a little bit. I'm going to throw some flux at it, and I'm going to pre-tin this wire, and then I want to look and see how much wire I got there, and I got a little bit too much, so I usually only take enough wire just to cover the pad. I don't want wire with insulation hanging out past the pad. And then I'm going to come in here with my iron for the kill. Bam. Solid there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a small piece of shrink, and I don't know the exact size of shrink I'm using here, but it's very small. And I'm going to pop on my shrink over that joint, just like that. You can see my shrink wrap over the joint. And now I'm going to turn on my handy dandy hot air rework station, which I'm going to use to shrink up this shrink wrap. And I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to shrink up this shrink wrap, the heat shrink. Now the heat shrink serves two purposes. Number one, it protects that pole from, it insulates that pole from shorting on anything else in the hilt, but it also gives some stress relief in that you don't want the wire flexing on that solder joint. You want the wire, it's going to be actually stiffer around where that shrink is, so it won't flex on the solder joint. It'll flex where the wire is flexible, as opposed to flexing on the actual solder joint itself. So now that we've done that, we're going to come in here and we're going to go just opposite of that green wire we just put on, and I'm going to put my white wire, which is my switch ground. So we're going to strip some white wire here. This is PTFE 30 gauge, and twist it, and we're going to dip it, and then we're going to, I think I want to do that because I'm right-handed with the soldering iron, and I didn't like where that was. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-tin. Trying to hold on to too many things with my own hands here. We're going to come in and pre-tin that pole on the switch, and then we're going to pre-tin this wire, and I'm going to clip this wire so it's not too long, and we're going to come in here for the kill on this wire. And actually I'm going to use my forceps here to hold this wire, because the wire does heat up a little bit, and I burnt my hands enough today. That wasn't real pretty. Bada bing. She's on. So now I'm going to take another small piece of heat shrink
and run it down my white wire over that pole. And we're in business here. And I'm going to put my shrink over that white wire. I'm going to bring in my hot air rework station and we're going to shrink that nut. Just like that. Now, I talked about the resistors, and on this one my positive is here on the top, so I'm going to go ahead and wire that one next. I'm going to wire my positive wire next on this switch. So I'm going to bring in some 30 gauge positive. Which pole do you put the resistor on, positive or negative? It doesn't matter. Current is like a river and it flows, and it doesn't matter which side of the, whether upstream or downstream of your LED that you put the resistor. DC current flows from negative to positive, and if you have your resistor on the positive side, then the current will only be permitted to flow at the rate the resistor allows through the positive circuit. So it's basically in effect slowed down. Now there is a moment if you put the resistor on the positive side where technically you could have greater current than the resistor allows for just a millisecond. It's actually going to be less than a millisecond, but for all intents and purposes, it doesn't matter whether you put the resistor on the positive or the negative line. Now in this instance today, I'm going to be putting the resistor on the negative side of the LED, and that's just how I do it. I've been using the resistors on the negative side for a long time. That's just what I do. Oh, I turned my heat gun off. So there we go. Heat shrinking the positive line on to our illuminated AV switch. And then I'm going to come over to the other side. And some people are going to disagree with this method. Some people may do it this way. This is the way that I like doing these resistors. And basically I'll put the resistor directly onto the negative pole of the LED. These wires are a little bit nuts here. I'm going to try and get them out of the way. Let me weight them down with something. There. So I'm going to go ahead and pretend this is the negative pole for my LED. So this is the one that's marked negative, and I'm going to pretend it. And this is where some people are going to disagree with me. But I'm going to solder this resistor direct to the pole on the LED. It just makes for, in my opinion, a real clean install. Oops, moved it before it cooled. When you moved it before it cools, it's a bad day. Now that's a good joint. So now I'm going to get a little bit bigger piece of shrink. Now this shrink will go over the resistor, and I just want to cover the pole, so this is going to be a really short piece. Typically I try not to cover my resistors in shrink because the resistor, along when it scrubs off amps, and you can see that's too long because it's covering the resistor does scrub off amps, and when the resistor scrubs off amps, it generates heat. That's why resistors also have a watts rating. Watts is a measure of heat, and we want the resistor to remain open to the air in the hilt so that when it scrubs off heat, it can radiate that heat to the open air. Whereas if you cover the resistor with heat shrink, then it's not able to radiate that heat, and it's holding the heat in, and it could cause the resistor to burn out. But in this application, with the very low voltage we're running, I highly doubt we're going to overheat this resistor. So now
I said my black line would be the power line that goes to our red LED. This is going to be the negative line to our red LED, and this line in the Saber is actually going to go to one of the MOSFETs on the Profi, and I'm going to define this as a blade. So this illuminated LED switch is actually going to be defined as a blade on the Profi so that I can control it, which is pretty cool because I'll be able to get it to do different behaviors when on versus off. And now I'm going to solder our wire onto the resistor, and that's a good solder. And now I'm going to bring in a small piece of heat shrink. I'm going to have this one be a little bit longer because I want it to protect the resistor a little bit from flex. A lot of people oppose soldering the resistor directly to the legs on the switch, because when you have this in the hilt, and this hilt is going to have a removable chassis, so it's this hilt that I'm installing this on has a drop chassis, so the wires will be going in and out, but I typically leave enough spare wire that there shouldn't be a whole lot of flexing of this illuminated AV switch going on. So now we have shrink wrap over our negative LED leg. So now what we're going to do is we're going to test the switch. So I'm going to get all this solder and crap out of the way, and let's go ahead and we're going to strip some of this wire off on each of our leads as I drop stuff all over the place. So I stripped a little bit off my switch lead. Now I'm going to strip a little bit off my LED positive lead, which is the red, and this is our LED negative lead, which is the black, and this is our switch ground, which is the white. Now technically you could take the switch ground, or the LED ground and the switch ground, you could wire them together and send them directly to ground, and if you do that, the problem is that the switch will always be on when the Saber has power. But since I'm wiring these grounds separately, this black wire, which is the negative to the LED, is going to one of the FETs on the Profi, and this white wire, which is my switch ground, is going to go to ground on the Profi. Because I'm doing that, I'm going to enable this illuminated switch to shut off when I program idle time off on my Profi. So now what we're going to do is we're going to test this switch. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to connect my test battery to the positive line, and then to the black negative, which is the illuminated LED negative, and you can see that we're illuminated there. So I know that the LED portion of the switch is wired correctly and the LED is illuminating. So then we're going to take the test battery out of here. Now we're going to test the switch wires themselves to make sure that the switch is activating properly. So I'm going to bring in my multimeter. I'm going to let y'all see it. I'm going to put my multimeter, let me get my helping hands out of the way because now the helping hands are in the way, to this audible ohms test. Now this is a continuity test, and when you touch the probes together, you get a beep and a... I'm going to go ahead and attach our red lead to the green wire, and I'm going to attach our black lead off our multimeter onto the white wire, and this 30 gauge wire doesn't really want to stay in my alligator clip, so sometimes I have to do a little bit of manipulation here to get it to work. And then we're going to depress the switch, and my green wires come off. Stand by. And my white wire came off. These alligator clips, I really need to get new alligator clips on my test set. See there, the green wire popped off again.
I'm going to bend it over. So that's the final test of our AV switch. So this AV switch is now wired properly and tested. The LED works and the switch wires work. Now what I'll do is I'll twist all of these wires together like this, nice and tight. This helps create stress relief for the resistor and for our solder points on the switch as well. And I'm also going to put a larger piece of shrink wrap at the base of these wires to further protect our connection points on the switch. And then this switch is ready to install in our hilt, which I'll show you. Might as well go ahead and show the switch install into the hilt while we're at it. The red is the positive for the LED, the black is the negative for the LED, the green is our switch lead, and the white is our switch ground. And those are the 4 wires together on our illuminated momentary switch. Now let's take a larger piece of shrink and let's put this larger piece of shrink over the entire bundle. I have tons of assorted shrink wrap. You know, in addition to resistors, it's always good to have tons of assorted sizes of shrink, heat shrink, because it just makes life easier. So I'm going to heat shrink all this together, and that should give further relief to all of our connections on the illuminated AV switch. And usually what I'll do is I'll give this a little bend, because inside the hilt that's going to be close to the bottom, and then that way when these wires flex inside the hilt, you can see that they're not flexing any of my connections. It'll be just flexing the wire. That's what I want. So I'm going to take the nut off of our illuminated AV switch. I'm going to drop that switch out of there. Now I'm going to try to get all this crap out of here, because I'm going to be bringing in our hilt and I don't want it to get scratched up by all this tools and stuff. And this is the hilt that I'm going to be installing that switch in, and I've already run the NeoPixel connector in, so basically all of our wiring is ready to go. That's my NeoPixel wiring. Now here is our AV switch going in. So there is our AV switch. Now once the AV switch is in, I'm going to feed the nut back over the wires. And this is the tricky part, especially with all these other wires in the way, is I'm going to feed this nut onto the AV switch inside of there. And then you can see that bend that I put in the switch wire heat shrink is now working, and I'm going to spin this nut onto the AV switch, and my switch wires are going the way I want them to go. And I'm spinning the nut onto the AV switch, and it's in there pretty good. And now I'm going to tighten the nut against the inside of my hilt until it doesn't want to spin anymore. About like that. And there's our final install of the switch. Now typically what I'll do, and I'll let this sit overnight, is I'm going to put a little bit of E6000 around the switch nut so that it doesn't back out. So I'm going to squeeze out some E6000 here, a little bit, and I'm going to put it on the switch nut in the hilt. to help secure that switch nut. And it doesn't take a whole lot of this glue, just a little bit, and that should prevent that switch nut from backing out on us inadvertently, which is what we're trying to accomplish there. We just don't want that switch nut to back out on us. So a little bit of glue on that switch nut is all it takes, and that's it. So we have our NeoPixel wires, and we have our switch leads coming out of there on this hilt from Finland that I've installed, and this one has some force lightning on it and some damage. Pretty cool little hilt. These are both going to be budget savers. This one's going to have Profi in it, and the other one is going to have Verso. They're both the same hilt, but I have this one set up like a Sith hilt, and the other one set up more looking like a Jedi type hilt. This one's got a D-ring on the pommel, and this one's got the saber clip button. But that's what we're doing here, so we're done with that.
Sorry about that. I was watching with y'all. So there's probably going to be some delay, some black screen there. Just stand by. So yeah, that was the end of the video. Hey, Melissa's World. Cool. I'm glad to see that you're getting used to the CFX Saber. And the whole reason that I did that video is, number one, I was already building that lightsaber, and I decided, I'll do a video on this lightsaber build because it'll be my first single switch Profi. And, I went ahead and documented it, but that post on Profi Board support group got me. Oh, I shouldn't have told y'all where it was. But, oh, I know. Look at that. It's already clean. It's the magic of editing. But the funny thing is, I got mixed up all in that mess on Facebook, and I remembered why Jeff left the community. I'm like, yeah, this is why Bert said he doesn't want to do it anymore, because of the drama. So as soon as I got involved in that drama, there was a bunch of terse stuff, and I just left. I was like, whatever. I didn't mean it that way. I was just trying to say I think there's a better way. And the guy that posted to me, he's like, yeah, well, I built 200 lightsabers. And I'm like, so you bought 200 dyna ohms? And I'm kind of like, yeah, okay. I'm actually using a little tripod from my GoPro camera. My tripod's over there, but you can see it like in the shot. You can see the legs of the tripod on the GoPro when I'm shooting there, Brian. But I like filming when I'm building because it's pretty cool because I can put those out there. And well, that's smart, Jeff. The reason I like the help videos, the tutorial videos, like building stuff, those get the most hits. They get the most views on YouTube, and so they're good for that reason. But for the most part, I don't like building under pressure. And the battery's still charging. I don't know if you guys can see that, but the battery's still charging in our new charger, which came out awesome. I'm going to unplug that so you guys can see it. So I did a little bit of painting on the charger, and there's the battery there up top. So there's the battery pack, and it slides right into the charger right there, and you plug in your USB right here, and your green and red LEDs are on there, so it's awesome. But that charger really came out good from the the disaster video we were doing last week. The charger really came out well. And I ended up using a 3mm normal LED. I did a red one and a green one, shaved them both down in half and put them together, and got them wired to the, yeah, that's the modified LED. It all worked out. So, when I burnt that LED at the beginning of that video last week, I don't know that it came through on the video, but I was like mondo frustrated. Last week, the live was late going on because the Streamlabs started, updating right when I was supposed to go live. My computer was trying to update when I was trying to go live. And then as soon as I went live, I was kind of, in a panic and all jittery. And then the LED melted right on camera. And I was like, great. Oh, Oh, the joys of doing these live videos, but it all worked out. Yeah, I think we all miss Birch. Birch is such a positive soul in the community. But I want to say this, Birch. As soon as I said what I said, and there was the reaction, I was kind of like, I was mad at the reaction because the guy just took it totally wrong. I wasn't trying to insult him. I'm like, there's a better way. And Lightsaber 101 is learning to calculate resistors on LEDs. And I'm sorry, but if you've installed 200 lightsabers and haven't learned how to figure out a resistor on an LED, then I'm trying to save people money. This is $3. This big pack, a dyno-ohm resistor is $3. You do what you want. And dyno-ohms are clunking around inside your saber. So I didn't mean to offend anybody. If you want to use a dyno-ohm, then use a dyno-ohm. But there's a cheaper way and a better way and a less noisy way to resist the LEDs in your saber. And by the way, so this is the saber you saw in that quick video. I'm trying to zoom in on it so you can see some of that Shamim style etching that I did, that force lightning with the aluminum black. And this is the button that you saw. Ooh, let me bring my finger there. There's the button you saw in that video. And then this is the lightsaber ready to be wired up. These are the LED wires that you saw in this video. There they are right there. These are my NeoPixel wires. Red, black, and purple is the data. And then we have my speaker wires and my main positive and negative. And I've already wired in the recharge port, the battery, and the speaker. So all that's left is to pop the Profi in here. And I'm probably going to shoot that video. So the video that you guys saw tonight, yeah, dyno drama. Hey guys, hey Kim Kanama. But yeah, the reason that I shot that video is already building the Sabers, so and I knew it was going to have an illuminated switch, so I shot the video. You guys kind of got to see the premiere of what's getting ready to be my next tutorial video that I'll post, and hopefully you guys won't see any more of my Mentor Graphics until I do the video on it. But the bottom line was, as soon as all that reaction happened from the drama, I just totally withdrew. I stopped posting anywhere. But, you've got great guys on Profi Board Support Group and Open Source Support Group that can help people with the Sabers. And unfortunately, what I see is like some new guy that just did his first Profi, and he's still hitting his boot and reset to get to upload. And he's using dyno-ohm resistors, and those are the guys giving advice now. And the other night, this guy posted, hey, every time I ignite my saber and clash it, it shuts off. And when I ignite it in a white blade, it shuts off. And all these people are like, oh yeah, you got to unwire your saber, and you got to desolder everything, and it's just a mess. And they haven't even seen what he did. And I'm thinking, if it's dying on flash on clash and it's dying on a white blade, that's using the most amps. My guess is you use the wrong battery. And most of these guys are, a lot of guys cheap out on batteries, unfortunately. And that's a fairly common problem. But until I answered the guy, there were like 15 other answers talking about, dismantle your entire saber. You screwed it all up. And these are all guys that were asking questions 2 days ago about how do I set my, how do I keep my saber? Every time I play a force sound, it clashes. And it's like, well, adjust your sensitivity and your config. But that same guy, he's now giving some other new guy advice, and I'm kind of like, this is crazy. So I pointed that out in probably a smart-ass kind of way. But I wasn't trying to be mean. I was just kind of like, dude, 2 days ago, you didn't even know what sensitivity settings were, and now you're giving everybody advice. I'm like, on those groups, you just need to be careful. You have Brian Connor, Fernando De Rosa, Dimitri Stock, Frederick Huvenet. Those are the kind of people you should listen to, not even me. I mean, those guys are geniuses. I'm just some schlep with a soldering iron that's putting these things together. But, there are good people to take advice from on those groups, and you really need to discern who those people are and wait for them to respond. Brian Connor is very active on all the groups. I know he answers a lot of questions, and you just have to be careful. But I disengaged. I pulled back. I left Facebook in the dust and stopped going there. So exactly, Ken. That's what you need to do, is watch the folks that are on there posting a lot, like Brian. Brian's working on all kinds of crazy OLED animations right now. I can't even keep up with him. He's like the the Fernando de Rosa of OLED animations. Him and the guy from Japan. I can't remember the guy's name from Japan right now. But yeah, I mean, those guys, those guys are awesome. And I was just frustrated. And, that's why I shot that video. But I'm done. I'm done being frustrated. I'm done posting on Facebook for a while. I'm just going to build lightsabers. Yeah, if you're getting a beep out of your CFX saber, you're definitely missing some sort of configuration file in your config. What you can do, Melissa, is if you can pull out your SD card and you can copy one of those files. It's probably either your LEDs text or some other text that you're missing in that particular font folder, and you can just copy it from one of the fonts that's not doing that. Yeah, Brian's awesome. Hey, Cole, great to see you. But I know I saw Eric on here earlier, Smooth Jazz Family. And I don't know if Eric's still on, but Eric will be happy to know. Look what came in. Bam! So the fact that I got this means that the Star Killer hilt is soon to be done. Now I can finish my Star Killer hilts because I got the Rustfex kit in. So the Star Killer hilts will be done and up for sale. At least one of them. One of them won't be. And then I'll have these two hilts up for sale. So these are the two Vector hilts from Finland. And this one's kind of set up like a Jedi hilt. And it's going to have a blue illuminated AV switch. And this one's going to be running Verso. And this is the Sith hilt. And, it's going to be running the red switch you saw in this video. And this one's going to have Profi in it. Both have a drop chassis on them. So the chassis drops out of the hilt. So you can get to the recharge port and the Profi or the Verso. Yeah, it should be, Melissa. The only thing I don't know is if you're going to be able to, when you put in the SD card, it's going to be a lot of reading because you're going to have to compare a font that it doesn't do that on to the one that it is. And it's doing it in the Kanan Jarrus font. But my guess is you're missing LED text or something like that, and you would just copy that file and put it into the font folder that is making the noise, which is your Kanan Jarrus font. But yeah, you should be able to do that, Melissa. It's not complicated. Just before you do anything to your SD card, Melissa, and this goes on any lightsaber, when you get a new lightsaber, I think one of the first things you should do is take your SD card out and make a copy of it on your computer. That way you've got a backup file of your SD and you can rewrite your SD if all else fails. But yeah, I think if you just make a backup of your entire SD card on your computer and then try to find which file that font folder is missing. And I think it's usually a LED, it says LEDs.txt is probably what you're missing in that config folder. And you have to forgive me, Melissa, because I've only done one CFX install. Actually, I've done 2 CFX installs, but that's usually what causes that. And I think you should be able to read. I think you'll be able to do it. You just have to get your SD card, and I don't know where the SD card was. But at any rate, yeah. So, Smooth Jazz Family, hopefully the Star Killer will be out there for sale soon. I'll send you an email before I publish it. If you want it, you can buy it. And then also these two hilts will be for sale. And I'm working on an OWK3, and I hate thin necks because I've got to figure out how to hook up the blade on that thing, because thin necks are such a pain because you just don't have any blade socket depth. But once I finish that OWK3, then we're going to be taking commissions, and I think commission number 1 is going to be Darth Guide, and he was on here earlier. I don't know if he's still on here, but yeah. So, pretty sweet. But, roll that beautiful beam footage from the night, and I will film the rest of the install on this saber, and that will be published as another install vid for a single button Profi, and then we'll be off. And this saber is getting Verso. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing the recessed target inside the blade, and then having the hilt PCB, having the blade go around the outside of it to give me full blade socket depth. The only thing is, I just don't know how to. I don't know how to secure the hilt PCB in that blade socket so that works, outside of like maybe epoxying it while I put a little bit of blade down there to set it. I don't know. I don't like thin necks. So normally I don't take MK1s or Hero installs or V2s because that blade depth problem. I don't know how to fix it. No, I got them. In fact, Kybertech Sabers, there you go. So that's thanks to you. You're the one that told me it was there at KR Sabers. So I did order them. So those are the actual .99 chassis that I needed for these Sabers. And also they work on the Vader's Vault Sabers. So they actually worked out really good. So those are some other, I've got 3 of those Vader's Vault Sabers that have CFX in them that I'm going to be ripping CFX out of and putting Profi into for one of my normal customers. And Darth Guide's going to be sending me a couple of Sabers, and then after that we'll see. I think once I finish all 5 of those Sabers, we'll just be opening his Dark Saber commission. Smooth Jazz family. We'll take it on. That Dark Saber, that hilt is such a pain in the butt, the one from Solo's Hold. I mean, I'll put one together if you want it, but I mean, I definitely need to recoup my investment there. Yeah, well, that's awesome. Kybertech Sabers. You know, I may, because I actually need one of those .99 chassis, so if you end up printing one, let me know. I may pick one up from you, but I'll need one more because I have 3 of those Vader Vault Sabers to install, and I didn't want to order all 3 chassis until I knew that they were going to work. The one good thing about the video tonight being in the can is I didn't have to talk as much, and here I am starting to talk again, and throat's getting dry, and I have to go to the water. But yeah, things are starting to pick up, and you know, I think we'll be, you know, I mean, I'm getting ready to have 3 Sabers out there for sale here in a bit, and have my last commission that was from before my move sent out, and these 3 Vader's Vault Sabers that I've got to finish up and get those sent out. Those were all pinning since before my move too, which is a big customer of mine, and he's been patient. He knows. I told him, look, I ain't going to get to these till 2021, and he didn't have an issue with that. Now he's sending me another Saber, and I'm like, oh my god. Hey, Michael Dallin, good to see you. Tonight we did a video about resistors, illuminated LEDs, and how to determine which resistor is appropriate for illuminated LEDs. But those work. That same method works for Tri-Cree LEDs for those of you still wiring in-hilt Sabers, and it also works for wiring illuminated switches or just normal LEDs. Now this, you know, the Mentor Graflex actually used several normal LEDs. It has 2 red LEDs here in the speaker pod that are 3 millimeters, and then illuminating the crystal chamber, which it's impossible for you guys to see on this video, but there's actually 2 3 millimeter LEDs here that just light up the crystal chamber, not the crystals. They actually light up the crystal chamber. And you know, I had to put resistors on those, and resistors are, you got to use the right ones. It's a good skill to know, and there certainly wouldn't have been room for a dyna ohm. I mean, you think about that. So that hilt has 4 normal LEDs in it. There's no way I could have fit. There's no way you're going to fit 4 dyna ohm resistors into this hilt. Impossible. The resistors on these red LEDs are actually mounted in behind the speaker. Dyna ohm ain't going to fit there, and the resistors for the blue LEDs are actually in the chassis, and I barely fit them in. And then, oh yeah, I know this chassis is just gorgeous. So, oh yeah, you heard a Samsung tone. That's because I probably got a text message or something on my phone, and the phone that I'm filming on is my phone. So I'm actually using my phone to film this, to stream it to my computer with Ivy Lab. But yeah, it might be a little too brassy there, Smooth Jazz family. It does look like a C3PO chassis, but you know, it's still awesome. I'm proud of that Saber. I'm really happy with it, and I'm hoping maybe this week to shoot the demo video for that Saber, so I can be done with it and put it up on my shelf with everything else, and then get, you know, head on into the rest of these builds. I would like to see the single 1515 NeoPixel PCBs, Kim, but are you having to build those yourself? I don't know if I'm really comfortable soldering the 1515 NeoPixels onto the PCBs. I've seen a couple of those PCBs that I want to try, but man, those things are so small. You know, I mean, I can solder an 0603 resistor, but that's about as small as I think I need to go. Anything smaller than an 0603 is too much for me. But yeah, I mean, I definitely would like to play around with them. Yeah, I think I'm going to actually use some brass weathering chemicals on there and then buff them off so that the low spots are all dark. You know, like they have dirt and grime in them, but then the high spots will be shiny brass. And, you know, I think that's what I'm going to do. So, you know, you'll have all these low spots, you know, in the detail pieces that'll have a lot of grime in them, but then the high spots will be shiny brass. And the thing's scratched up from pulling it in and out of the hilt already, but it polishes right up. I've already buffed it out and polished it out, but it's all scratched up again. It is pretty tight inside the hilt. Yeah, there was a lot of drama, Melissa. I saw there was more drama on the vault. You know, the key thing to that, Melissa, dirt and grime. Yeah, Jedi Seth chimes in. Oh, well, you would like this, Jedi Seth. So I did some Shamim style weathering on this saber, and I did it light. I didn't go crazy with it, but you can see some of the, you know, the Force Lightning, Shamim type damage there, and then I put aluminum black in it. So this hilt is more like Seth style, and I put this big chunk of damage in there too. You know, so at any rate, yeah, electric skillet, solder. I have a rework station. I need to get the solder paste. It's definitely something I'd like to learn, Kim. Certainly, you and I could probably talk offline, maybe, and I could try something. But right now, I've got so many lightsabers to build. I think I just need to get to building sabers before I start screwing around with anything else experimental for me. But yeah, glad to see you on here, Jedi Seth. That's awesome. Jedi Seth's been busy painting and going crazy. The sky scenes you painted, Jedi Seth, are incredible, beautiful paintings. But yeah, the Star Killer should be done soon. But yeah, I've got a lot of sabers to build. So I'm going to get pretty busy. If a topic comes up, I mean, I'm going to still try to do these when I can on Mondays. But when I have a lot of lightsabers to build, I may take a week or two off so that I'm building lightsabers. So I'm trying to dedicate just a solid day for, you know, my lightsaber stuff instead of it being like 7 days a week. And we'll try to go there. Shamim did leave several years back, but he's still a huge inspiration to me. And, you know, I learned a lot by watching Shamim's videos on YouTube. It's one of the reasons that I did so many Profi videos, because I saw what Shamim did for Nana Biscotti and a lot of other things he was doing. And I tried to do the same thing for Profi. But Melissa, that's why, you know, some of my videos are kind of frustrating for you because they're geared more toward lightsaber builders and installers than users. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that we're doing to build and install these sabers is, you know, a bit too much for you. You're not really, you know, able to see or understand some of what we're talking about. Some of my friends at work watch my videos and they're like, "You are a nerd." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a nerd, all right." But, oh yeah, Cole, so I'll show you again. So these are two sabers from Finland by Vector. And I have one that's done up like a Sith saber. It's going to be single button Profi. And this one's more like a Sith saber. This one that I'm holding in front of the camera. And it's going to have a drop chassis on it. It's a very simple saber. It would be a budget saber. Blade socket's a little bit loose on that one. Then I have this one, which this is more, you know, kind of like a Jedi. It's going to have a blue button, and this one's going to be running Verso. This one will be my first Verso install, so I'm pretty excited about that. And I may shoot a video on that since it's my first Verso install. But this saber is going to be running Verso. Both of these will be budget sabers. You know, a lot cheaper than my normal installs. Number one, because they're single button. But number 2, because they're, not complicated, and, the parts in them aren't that expensive, and they're drop chassis. There's no crystal chambers. I did some weathering on the Saber, but I think I mainly did that to make up for the fact that the blade socket's loose, and I still got to find a solution to that problem. I think the only thing I can really do is drill and tap another blade retention screw up higher. So blade retention on this one is this screw right here. And, I've got to figure out something to do there. But I did a D-ring on the back of the Jedi Saber here. So that one's got a D-ring on the back, and this other one's just got, a normal saber clip. So, I mean, these aren't totally special, but I got to figure out what to do to tighten up that blade socket on that. The Star Killer is not that complicated. Smooth Jazz family, it's a fairly simple saber in the big scheme of things. Hang on a second. I'll go grab it. So it's just a simple chassis, very simple chassis with a Profi, and that one's already wired. But I didn't even wire a kill switch. It does have a removable 18650 battery, and but it does have a crystal chamber. On a Star Killer, the crystal chamber is exposed. But I got to finish up the weathering on this puppy, and she'll be good to go. But there's the Star Killer. I'm going to knock down some of the rust on that. Like I said, what y'all are looking at is a rough draft here. This isn't a finished product, but this Saber's already installed. It already works. So, and I've got to update the config on that thing too. Once I update the config on that, it'll be golden. But these Star Killers are pretty cool. This one is a Saber Royale Star Killer, and he poo when he saw what I did to his hilt, because they're all shiny and brand new. Here, I'll show you what a new one looks like. So this is a Phoenix Prop 7 Chambers, and I've already built and sold 4 of these, and I like them so much because of the stainless steel emitter. And the reason that I bought another one was because of the stainless steel emitter, because you can heat stain them, and I'm trying to get that where it's in the light where you can see that heat stain on the emitter, which is really awesome. Yeah, Corbant had a Star Killer too. But I'm going to do some rust effects on this and weathering similar to this, but there you can see a new shiny with nothing done to it except the heat staining on the emitter versus, crappy and rusty and weathered. So that's the difference. Jedi Seth likes this. I also put some damage on that bunny ear too. I don't know if you can see that. I need to get better lighting. But this one will probably be mine. This one will be a personal one. And it was because when I sold all those Star Killers that I made, I love those Sabers so much. I was like, wow, I really regretted selling them. And the Saber Royale Star Killer is awesome too. But the one thing that I really like about the Phoenix Props Sabers, and this is where the Phoenix Props has an advantage over the Saber Royale, was the stainless steel emitter and the fact that you can heat stain it versus the Saber Royale one's just aluminum. This one's aluminum, that one's stainless steel. So that's the big difference. That's the big difference there. Yep, the Star Killers are supposed to look grimy and rusty. He built them out of junk parts, and they look rusty and grimy in the video games, and old and junky and scored up. And so when I build a Star Killer, I make them look rusty and grimy, and that's what I did on this one. And I'll knock some of this down so it won't look quite that rusty and grimy. It'll have some shine to it. But I got to finish doing the weathering around the grips. And once I finish doing the weathering around the grips and knocking some of this other stuff down and polishing up where I can, she'll be good to go. And once I get it to my liking, to where it's looking pretty good, then I'll post it for sale, and I'll give you dibs on it. Smooth Jazz family, you've been asking me about it for months. Junkie, yeah. Jedi Seth likes rust and aluminum black. All of his hilts are pretty much. Jedi Seth don't make shiny hilts. He don't do that. He don't do shiny. All of Jedi Seth's hilts look like they're right out of the Star Wars universe, and they've been used in battle for years. And you know, I have some hilts like that, and I have some shiny hilts. I like my Graflexes, but, you know, I like my Nihilus too, which has a lot of weathering on it. But yeah, you know, that's, to me, that's some of the art in making lightsabers, is putting your own spin on what the outside looks like. Especially like the non-canon hilts, like, you know, when I say not canon, I mean not movie hilts, like the Star Killer and Nihilus and some of the other hilts, is you can put your own spin on how they look. Whereas, you know, you start talking about more of a canon hilt like the Graflex. I mean, this is in A New Hope, and that's what it's supposed to look like, pretty much. I mean, you even got the double rivet D-rings on the back, and that's my Mentor Graflex. But the Mentor's not in there right now, but that's my Mentor Graflex. But, yeah, I dig the weathering too. It just depends on which saber. I like weathering on a Crossguard. I like it on Nihilus's saber. I like it on Star Killers, but I don't like weathering on Graflexes. That's why I don't like the Rise of Skywalker Broke Flex. I don't like it. Eventually I'm going to have one, though. At any rate, we've been on for over an hour, and if Birch was still on here, he'd be yelling at us. Hey, we'll see you, Brian. Yep. I'm getting ready to leave too, Brian, so you're not the only one. May the Force be with you all. And, you know, if I have a topic next week, then I may go live next week. If I'm not live, I'm building lightsabers, so everybody bear with me. Got to get some stuff done. But it's great to see everybody. Thank you again for coming. And, you know, maybe if I'm going to go live next week, I'll post it on my YouTube channel and also on the Facebook page. So until the next time we see each other, may the Force be with you all, or the dark side, as it were.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. As usual, I really appreciate y'all tuning in on my channel. And as always,